Welcome to the Sencast. My name is Dale Pickles. I'm the host of the Sencast and I'm also the managing director of B Squared. If you are a new listener, then welcome to the Sencast. The aim of the podcast is really simple. We want to reach lots of people and help everyone learn more about special educational needs and disability. In this episode, we discuss the role of technology and how to use it effectively within the classroom. And my guest joining me this week was Stephanie Smith, the head of school at the Cavendish School. And Stephanie has over 10 years working in and alongside the autism community and across mainstream and specialist settings. The Zencast is created and produced by us here at B Squared. I normally mention our assessment software on this podcast, but this time I'm going to talk about EverSense, our evidence for learning and our parental communication system. EverSense feels like social media, so it's extremely easy to use, and everyone picks it up with minimal training. But it's also extremely secure. Very important. It's a safe place to share evidence of learning with parents or external professionals. It's a great way to capture pupil voice or use it as your homeschool diary or reading diary. Visit the B Square website to find out more about EverSense or click on the meeting link in the show notes to book a meeting with me to take you through what EverSense can do for your school. Now, let's get on with the podcast. My guest this week is Stephanie Smith, the head of school at the Cavendish School. Stephanie has over 10 years working in and alongside the autism community across mainstream and special schools. The Cavendish School is Cambridge's first state-maintained special autism school, and the school's mission is enabling the self, helping pupils to enjoy learning and gain the skills to grow into independent, confident young adults ready to achieve their goals. Welcome to the show, Stephanie.
Hi.
I absolutely love technology, and from our previous chat or so far is you also love it. But overall in education, I feel school leaders are a bit hesitant about using technology. So what made you jump in and really make use of technology to help your students learn?
So I think the biggest thing for me was when we look at the world outside of education, and the point of education is to have young people to be in the outside world, that's full of technology. And if we hide from it inside education, then actually we're only disadvantaging them when we leave. And as educators, we're using it all the time in assessment systems, emails, and all of that. And we need to embrace that for our children as well.
Definitely, I do feel whenever you talk about handwriting in school, everyone just goes, "Look, we're all handwriting." You're in a room full of people with notebooks, handwriting. And it's like hard
Yeah.
to say that this is probably one of the only few buildings I'll go in for the next couple of weeks where anyone will actually write anything down. Because in the office we're in, look, most people are digital only, or they have that little notepad for writing in the moment, and then it goes digital. So yeah, you love your paper in schools. You all do. You love your writing, and as you said, the rest of the world is different. The rest of the world is digital. It's tools. It's technology. And you use them in your job. And I do think this kind of fear of using technology, banning mobile phones, things like that, technology is bad in school, is, as you said, is not preparing them for the outside world.
100%. I mean, we talk about having functional handwriting here because it's a bugbear of mine that actually the focus is on, can you write something? And somebody always says you'll write an application form. I think in the last 2 years, I've had 3 handwritten application forms. The rest have all been completed on a computer and emailed in. So even that age-old adage is not true anymore.
No, I'm very much the handwriting process and being so transfixed on the beautiful handwriting and things like that is just a really big barrier for some students. I hate handwriting. I signed my name a couple of times in the last week, and I think I had to fill in a form for some medical thing I had to fill in by pen. But yeah, most forms now I sign are digital. I bought a car, everything was digital. There was not a single bit of handwritten information passed back and forth. Everything was digital. Please, let's just focus on what it is they're writing, how creative they are, not how well they're holding a pencil.
Yeah. I mean, the other flip side to it is it's not just about that handwriting, is it? But it's also just about knowing that if you're going to use those tools as an adult, that actually it's okay to use them now and not be so antiquated. And they're the ones who are going to create the next set of things, these children, that we're going to want to use. And we're desperate to use it. So are they.
Definitely. And it is that thing. I always remember being told we're preparing children for jobs that don't yet exist. And I love that line because I sit there and look back and go, yeah, when I was in primary school in the 80s, there were definitely no podcasts. And all the other things I do with the company and the software and all the stuff we do, that just did not exist in the 80s. And however much I think the world might be for my children, I have no idea where the world's going to be in 20 years.
No, I mean, I was just thinking about, back in the 80s that we've recently embarked on a collaboration with the Open University for sixth form, and that used to be delivered with 2 o'clock in the morning videos on the telly and loads of books delivered to your house. And we're like, so we need a good quality device and a solid internet access, and a world of learning has opened up. So, yeah.
Oh, that flashbacks to teach. There's lots of educational programs on overnight, and you'd record and set your video up to record it, and then watch it, and wheel the trolley round with the TV on. Yeah, and I was in Croydon, and they had somewhere a proper metal branding iron, which had Croydon Education Committee. So I don't know how they did it, but any equipment that got pushed right into the plastic, the video player, the TV, whatever, all computers were like branded Croydon Education Committee. Those were the days.
Because we want more people to be using technology, so we don't want to go back to late night TV shows.
No, that's the thing. There is so much technology, and at the moment, what we're just talking about is kind of computers and kind of just doing those things in a mobile way. It's that communication, it's that receiving information, but it's also that you can engage back and forth, you can have conversations, and you can create your own things using these tools as well. They've just on that level, we've already got a lot of powerful technology which helps children and young people to express themselves in a way that makes sense for them.
Yeah, I mean, we have here a robot, and for those children who can't get into school, for whether it's emotional based school avoidance or they've had some physical difficulties and they might have been in hospital, and you stick the robot in the classroom, and all of a sudden the classroom's not scary anymore. They can see everybody, and it sits on a desk. You can't make it walk around, but it can swivel and it can put emotions on the face. So all of a sudden the classroom's no longer this scary place because they've been in it, albeit remotely, and they've been able to talk to friends and make friends without that fear of being in the classroom.
So when you say robot, I was going, oh, sure, but you mean one of those kind of, it's like I'm going to say it's a robot for Teams or Zoom type thing. There's a camera in it, there's a screen, there's a microphone, there's a speaker. So that person can be at the table with their peers and, as you say, can look around and can contribute and join in those activities from home.
Yes.
I love them. I've seen them at a couple of shows and that looks so cool.
I remember when I was speaking to somebody and they'd been out of school for a really long time, and the barrier for them was, I don't know what school's like anymore. Like that was 3 years ago, and I don't know the people, I don't know what the classrooms look like. How can I, especially if you're autistic, how can we take something I have no frame of reference for and be able to overcome all of my anxiety to get into that classroom? Well, I tell you what, let's put you in there and let you experience it from the safety of your own home. So
And at any
it is,
moment, you can just cut the screen, close the screen, turn your monitor off, walk away instantly. You're not stuck in there going, well, how do I get out?
yes.
You're kind of, you're removing a lot of the barriers, a lot of the what happens if it does go wrong? Then there's a whole load of other concerns of, if it does go wrong, what do I do? That is quite easy. If it does go wrong, I'm at home, I'm safe.
Yeah.
Nice. I've seen those robots at shows because you watch them. I've seen ones where you can actually, people control them and move them around. You can get walking versions, which seem quite strange. But I have also heard of the ones you've got where they're sitting on a desk. And it is just literally like you're sitting at a table with everyone else and you're involved.
Yeah, you can see the teacher delivering at the front of the class, or if they're wandering around doing group work, you can join in the group work, which also makes it that little bit more powerful than Teams and Zoom, because obviously it's not as clunky as trying to put a laptop somewhere where you can see. It's designed to be like you're a person in the room.
Love it. Love it. So, what other technology do you use in your school?
Well, we currently have a VR sandbox or an AR sandbox. So there is a projection into a sandpit that you can see them sometimes in museums, and you can teach things like the life cycle through them. And for our primary school children who are quite sensory, that's a huge way for them to get in. They're also quite fun. So when the DFE came to have a look around the school after it was built, pretty much all of them ended up playing in the VR sandbox so that they could experience it. So, even the most reluctant learners will join in. We've also got VR headsets, and we're starting some work with Campus XR so that can be more than just what's already commercially available. They're building a platform so that you can create like a little mini virtual reality school for the children to join in. Things like dissection can happen without actually having a physical thing. But you can also visit places. So Anne Frank is one that we use in our history lessons. So just on the little MetaQuest, you can go into for free Anne Frank's house and explore it as part of the history lesson. And it's amazing the difference that bringing that to life has, and feeling like you're exploring it rather than just studying it. And I suppose you could do it in your English lessons with the Diary of Anne Frank as well.
Nice. So you talked about at the beginning AR, VR. So VR is virtual reality. AR is augmented reality, where you're kind of mixing that digital world and the physical world. And you're talking about a sandbox. So what is that? Is it literally a sandpit like box?
It is. It's a sand, like a playground or a garden sandbox. It's filled with a good 4 or 5 blocks of sand, and then there is a overhead projection which comes down onto the sand, and then if you move the sand, it just changes what it's displaying and how it's working. So for the life cycle of water, you can build mountains so that the clouds going over move. You can create a little pit to create a lake, so it and then make it hot so that you can watch it evaporate and create the clouds. But being the children creating the life cycle and changing it all round in the sand. So for them, it's fun and it's tactile. But actually, the learning that goes through it is phenomenal.
So I've watched it where I think it's the water-based one where you got these kids in the sandpit and it's like got a lake there. And they take the edge of the lake off and it just empties out into the new bit,
Yeah,
but all nice and dry.
you can make volcanoes, and when they get big enough, you can put a hole in the top and watch them erupt. And the projections that go into that show you actually how the volcanoes erupt and what happens, and the magma flows that would result from that as well.
That is very cool. That is very, very cool. So you're obviously using a lot of these with children, and you're using it with all age children.
Yes, so tends to be when they get to year 10 and 11, because they've been doing it for quite some time with us, it's not quite as much fun anymore. They've had that, but actually it works, especially the VR headsets, it works all the way up. One of the things we do with Key Stage 4 is careers stuff through the VR. So um, there's a game job simulator that they do, and it's not really related to jobs, but is a stimulus for talking then about why isn't it real, or why is there bits that are actually quite realistic? You might be sat in a cubicle.
I have seen that job simulator. I think I got a VR headset and it was like a job simulator. You can simulate what it's like to wash pots, and it's just some really random jobs of sitting in an office, but it does give you that idea of what is this job going to be like? What is the environment like? What am I
Yeah,
doing? And it gives you that idea. It is a game I thought was completely random, but now I've actually think about it in an educational setting, it makes sense.
it does.
Nice. That's the thing is, I think as adults, if I said working at McDonald's to another adult, they literally would have a load of things. They'd have a really good concept of what I meant, what maybe they might smell like at the end of the day. You would know. And if I said working at a zoo, you'd be like, that's probably great in the summer. Probably get cold and wet and the smell of poo. You kind of would have a lot of um, information to go on to know what that job's like. But when you're young, you don't have that information.
No.
And I think using that net technology to help them visualize and kind of think about that will really help them think about what job is for me.
It also opens up what you can explore, because there's so many different jobs that you might, one, not know exist, but two, it's really hard to go and experience what it's like to be a zookeeper for a day. It's not, especially for young children who are at the beginning of their careers journey, and we should never underestimate the impact of talking about adult life and careers and your interests from an early age. But this is a way to do that, and it's a fun way that taps into the fact that actually hobbies for most of these children is VR, it is video games, it is that sector. Well, let's use it to enthuse them about the next stages of their life.
And that's the thing is that VR and all that tech, it is familiar to them. They might have, as you said, Oculus Quest, the Facebook stuff at home. They might be just having that at home, sharing that or using their friends. So it isn't a brand new experience. Um, and you can just give it a tweak. So rather than being a game, which is purely just fun, you're tweaking it and they're discovering something new. But in reality, moving around would just be the same as they're playing in their games. So it's very familiar, but actually, this is a learning experience.
And it makes it really obvious that learning doesn't necessarily have to be, particularly for the SEND students I work with, sat at a desk, writing, not moving, and not being able to engage those sensory systems that sometimes are so important.
Definitely. And it also helps them see that learning isn't boring. It's sitting at that desk, which is, there's so many ways you can learn. And, but you're helping them create that curiosity. It's something about schools. We have all those excited children arrive at school, and then somehow by the time they're 16, that curiosity's gone. They're on that treadmill. They're ready to just follow and do as they're told. We want to keep that curiosity. And technology, VR, AR is a great way of letting them experience things they would not otherwise be able to experience. As you said, it's being that zookeeper. What's that like? What would I experience? Or traveling to Anne Frank, or one I've seen VRs where you're on the edge of the volcano looking down into it and things like that. What would that feel like?
Yeah. There's just the world out there at their fingertips with this technology.
It is amazing. Have you read the book Ready Player One?
So this is where I'm bad, because I'm normally a book reader and have watched the film.
So the book and the film are kind of two different things. Same
Okay.
characters, same world, different story. But he is a student at school at the time of the book. And in the book, he kind of isn't having a happy time at school and basically getting bullied and not great school. And he gets given a really cheap, bad government provided uh, VR lens and gloves, and he accesses virtual school. So kind of like what you're creating, where you have that virtual classroom, he goes to school like that. but you cannot swear in it. You can say what you want, but the swearing will not come out in the environment. You cannot do any physical violence or intimidate anyone. And it's all these sorts of things, little rules that kind of mean you kind of have to behave in there, or you appear to be behaving. You can't annoy anyone. But there's a whole, but it's in the whole world. But actually, I look at that and going, I would have loved school like that, because I can pay attention at my level. I can go along with the lessons, but I can also have my own stuff going on, which isn't distracting other people. So they have little windows up watching TV or doing his own reading. But I like that. And he has his friends, because that's the thing, you still need to be able to socialize. And I think socializing VR when there is other people in front of you is different to just chatting on your phone. It
Yes.
will feel more like you're socializing, and you can even help people learn how to socialize in those environments.
It takes away some of the inputs, particularly for my youngsters who there's the smells, there's the light, there's the additional noises that are gone when you use virtual reality. But also, depending on the type you use, so are the facial expressions. So then you just pay attention to the tone and the cadence of the speech alongside what they're actually saying.
And it kind of evens the playing fields, because everyone's only got what you're saying and how you're saying it to go on. Not one person's picking up on that visual cue, that side eye you gave,
Yeah,
or the tone, or all that is kind of gone. You've just got what you're saying, how you're saying it. That's all you get. And where some people can really pick up on those little observations and really get the body, that's all gone. You've just got to work on that, which means your communication has to be clearer, and
yes.
and everyone gets that same information. So if everyone else is getting it wrong, if everyone's misunderstanding you, then perhaps I need to change how I communicate.
Does level the playing field. And I think for so many, that's what COVID taught them, was that kind of learning and that style, it did level the playing field for them. For some others, it didn't, but everybody's different.
Yeah, there are some who will kind of just crack on and do really well. My daughter's loved COVID. In the feedback, my daughter wrote, I didn't have to put up with the idiots. But there are those who needed that support but would not have asked. And it's that teacher walking past them and noticing they're struggling is the bit that's needed, and they need that help. So it will work for some, it will not work for others, but it's how we find those out. You've got to give it the opportunity, you've got to try it to find out, does it work, rather than just assuming it doesn't work. So we've discussed VR, we've discussed AR. Let's go for AI next. Do you use AI in your school?
AI is something that we are less good at in terms of the staff are probably quite frightened of it. And it's something that we're currently working on, because otherwise the children, well, our children are already telling us that they've overtaken us in this area. And it's one of those things that actually is going to be sticking around. It's not going anywhere. And it has so many uses. So the children now are using it in terms of creating their own worksheets and their own reflective feedback. So if you imagine the teacher sitting there going, you've misunderstood this element of the learning, let's go back, revisit, review and move forward so that you can, they can take that and use AI to make that feedback so personal, and what they do as their next step so personal. Whereas, particularly if you're in a class of 30, that's not always as easy to do.
No, what I like about AI is, let's say a teacher's given them some feedback as, oh, you didn't understand why the character did this. You can literally take the block of text, put it into ChatGPT and go, I don't understand why the character did what they did. Can you help me? And it will kind of go through and help you see where the key bits of information that you missed are. So where not necessarily the teacher has that time to go through in that level, the AIs can give you that nice low level, really helping you see this is the bit you've missed. I use AI in a lot in my writing and rewriting. sometimes I'm bad at arranging my words. I know what I want to say, and I'll say it really badly into the AI and go, please just rewrite this. And it will put it into a lovely sentence, which isn't how I would write. I then adjust it, but it has got that bit where maybe my sentence structure was wrong. I had the order of that sentence wrong, but it just really helps me on those sorts of things, which I really like. And sometimes I might have a sentence which is like 50, 60, 70 words long. And I just go, please just say this in a short version. And it creates it to 12 words. And you're like, that's so much clearer. And that's such an obvious thing. Why did I not even think of that? So I love AI for all the language stuff. I love using it to either to rewrite, to summarize, to simplify things. In my governor role, we were doing there's a cybersecurity audit, and we got our scores out, and we were like ones and twos. We should have been threes and fours. I had that as a PDF. I had another PDF with a scoring system. And I said, can you just write out what we need to do to get to three and fours based on where we are now? And it just merged the two documents together and gave us for each bit exactly what we needed to change. It saved me hours of boring work. I also had to
learn from it when you're using it to say, just check I haven't missed anything in this parent email. So that when I respond, they're not going back with, you didn't tell me about this question I asked, or where you've asked it to. Most often, if I use AI, make sure that what I've said is clear, but it has my type of tone and that it's soft and professional. Is normally my little starter for AI. And copy in my email and what I'm replying to, just to make sure. But now that actually I remembered some of the things that I automatically do wrong. So I'm terrible, and I'm really sorry to all of my university lecturers for using the word that constantly in my sentences. English teacher, I'm sorry. It has taken AI to rewrite my sentences for me without that in constantly. I need to finally learn how to do it. It has a place.
It does. And that's the thing. There isn't a thing where you can just put in a bulleted list and it gives you a lovely paragraph and you're not even going to try. It's like, well, actually, no, because once I read it, I'm learning different ways I could write. And it means actually I start doing it. So I personally, I'm like you, I learn, which almost means the more I use it, the less it actually changes what I write, because my language and my English has got better from being corrected. And I think people think people won't do that. What they will do is they will just put no effort in because the AI will finish it off for them. But in my experience, especially with the language stuff, is it has helped me and it helps my colleagues be better at writing. It helps us see maybe what I'm saying is a bit boring. And I go, oh, this is boring. How would you rewrite it? And you read it and going, wow, that's so much more exciting. And you compare it to what you wrote, and there's just a couple of key adjustments. A lot of the time, it's we changing the tense. So we have written, we are creating, and it's just things like that. Just a few changes of words and tense, and the reordering them makes a really big difference. But until I could read Romeo and Juliet, and I could badly answer those questions on Romeo and Juliet, but then trying to use that in my own writing, I can't. But having ChatGPT using those clever bits of English in my own writing, now I understand it. Now I see those changes. Now I see what they mean by doing this, because I've had it on my writing. I've had the perfect piece created and gone, that sounds amazing. And I'm learning.
About it that way, how many of us have sat in a classroom when the teacher's giving feedback and we've taken it personally? You know, those children who've got rejection sensitivity issues, those children who see that as a demand or somebody saying that they failed. When it comes from a computer and they've just slightly written it and there's no emotion behind that and there's no judgment behind it, you learn so much more because you've taken that complex human bit that goes jars against somebody criticizing you, because we all view it that way, we're human, and then it makes it okay to take that feedback and learn and grow. And I do think, we've got one young man here, and he will not allow a teacher to mark his work, because if they mark his work, that meant that it couldn't be perfect. And he really feels like if he's not perfect, then people won't like him, and he's really sensitive in that way. But actually, he's quite happy for AI to tell him that he could have written a sentence better, because it's not a person and it doesn't have that relationship that he's worried about breaking from
Yeah.
taking that feedback.
And it always starts with something like, I had one today, and I see what you're writing here. And it is really engaging. It's hitting all the right stuff, but I've just had a little bit of a refresh. And you read it and it is half rewritten. So it's a bit more than a little refresh. But you've dressed it up nicely to me, ChatGPT, and you've made me not feel embarrassed about what I've written. It was perfect. It's that wording, which, again, as teachers and as adults, when we're talking to our children, we may not get the tone right because we're kind of busy. We've got lots going on. And how we intended something to happen and how it actually came across can be different. But yeah, there is something about a computer telling you something and a person completely different. How else do you use technology in your school?
I suppose it's the standard things that you maybe don't realise are there that you might use, but actually you can think about and incorporate. So it is the fact that I dyslexic, and if I'm on a computer, can I change the background colour because my dyslexia is impacted by Erlen syndrome, or can it read it out to me in the headphones and then I can get on? Or I'm sure lots of schools use Dragon software for dyslexic youngsters who need to use speech to text, but actually it's built into iPads and it's built into Word, and it's about teaching our children that those technologies are there and to use them and to be able to incorporate them. The other thing that we do, and I don't know if other places will think it's good, is our children will email us and I've got proms next week. Can we make sure Benson Boom's played, please? And it's those things that bridge the gap between their generation and what's normal for them. And teachers, talking of us older teachers, maybe some of the newly qualified are already there.
It's interesting. There's a lot in there, and that assistive adaptive technology, whatever you want to call it, to support them to be independent is so crucial. And I don't think necessarily all schools realise the importance of that. I think some parents do believe, when you read about having a TA is the golden ticket for your child. You want them to have a TA to fully support them and all this lot. In reality, you're making that child reliant on that person. What you want that person to teach your child is how to do things on your own, not be reliant. Because if you're reliant on that TA, then when you go out at break time and they're not with you, you can't do all the things you need to. So if you can find ways and teach that child to be independent, use technology to do their writing, to understand if they're not sure, use technology, better understanding, you're making that child so much more independent that they're going to not only use that within the school, but use that at home and be able to be much more involved in life without having to rely on someone to be there to do it for them. And then that last bit about emailing teachers, um, my daughters find messaging easier than talking. And there are times when my daughter has messaged me a concern that she would not have said to me in real life. She would not have said it to me face to face, but she can message it to me and I will respond because that's less confrontational. We don't even have to be in the same room when we're having that conversation, which is a nice thing. So I personally think messaging or emailing is perfectly fine. I think it's a good thing because you're building that relationship and you're modeling how to communicate. But there is that, as always, not overnight, not weekends.
Yes.
You probably do that, but I've just got to make sure it's added in that that staff time is protected. But I also know, this was years ago, there was a teacher at a conference said every day he put up on his whiteboard a different Twitter hashtag, literally a random selection of characters and letters. And his kids could go on Twitter, use that hashtag to ask for help.
Oh, that's good.
So they never had to stick their hand up and go, oh my God, they don't get it. Thicko type stuff going on. They could literally just say, I don't get this. And he could either respond or just walk up to them and slightly help them without drawing that attention. So I like things like that. You don't have to ask in front of your friends. My daughter won't ask teachers anything. She just will not, because someone might see that she can't do it, or she might. So emailing, much better. I like that.
Yeah.
But it is, again, email, messaging, that's what they're going to do in the real world. When they leave school, they are going to be emailing their colleagues. They're going to be messaging friends. They'll be doing all of that. That's how they'll get all the rules about their job and everything, and learning that will all be via email. Very often will the HR department be in the same building they are. The HR will be miles away probably.
Yeah. And there's whole HR companies nowadays, they just buy it in. So as adults, if somebody said the only way you can communicate is to talk to somebody or to write it down, we'd be mortified. We do
I'm
need
at
to
the
teach
point
them to be there and do that.
I'm at the point now where I just don't answer my phone if it's not a saved number. If I don't know who it is, I'm not answering it. If it's that important, message me. Like either they'll then message me and go, or they don't. Whereas if you didn't, it's not that important. But I don't know if that's just an age thing. I've got to that point where I just don't care, or I've just realised I don't know. I like to know what I'm getting into before I pick up that phone. I don't know what it is, but for me, if that phone's ringing and I don't know it, this could be a sales call. It could be something about my car. It could be something. I've no idea what it's going to be. I'd rather not pick it up. I'd rather them send me a message afterwards, or I listen to the voicemail so I know roughly what it's about, that I can choose whether or not I want to engage in that conversation. Whereas when I was young, it was you just picked up the phone. In London, you said the last four digits of your phone number, so 0040, and then the conversation would start. And it's not even for you, it's for your sister or something.
Oh, all the big long cables. We're going back to the 80s again.
Everyone listening to your phone call conversation in the hall,
Yeah.
because that's where the phone was. But I think emailing is another way of modeling and helping them learn with that limited communication of just the words. You have to be clear in your communication and then understanding the communication that's coming back.
From a safeguarding perspective, we found that it has been phenomenal. So, I mean, we also have a website page that they can go on and it would email us like an instant messaging service. But the number of children who felt more comfortable to say, is this bullying? This happened and I'm not sure I feel comfortable with this, or I've had this falling out with my friend. How can I fix it? And I would never have expected 10 years ago to have got messages like that from a 14-year-old when they had to come and ask those questions in front of their friends or acknowledge it. And things like disclosures are so much easier when they don't have to look at your face and try and work out, are they thinking that I'm in the running here, or having to deal with this so much shame around disclosures for young people. There isn't any of that if it's just being sent to them. And so we get to better protect our children.
That's a really, really, really valid point. Because if we think about stressful situations for ourselves, going into a job interview, or even I literally, I can go back to school and having to walk into a teacher's office, just putting my hand out to grab that door handle to open the door, them to look at you and be able to speak. It's just, there's a lot of anxiety in that. just to actually get in there and say, "Hi, sir," and then say the next bit is so big. It's huge. But if I could just write that down and send, I've reduced all of that, and I will definitely be more open to asking those things if I'm not sure. So I like the fact that your children can email you. I think that's a great thing. I think that's a really engaging way, and it's modeling so many different things. Um, yeah, it really reduces that anxiety of having those difficult conversations. Nice. I like that. Has there been any technology things that haven't worked? Let's go the other way. What hasn't worked? Anything not gone well?
Um, so I don't know if there is, to be fair. I think the hardest thing is the fact that when they're really upset and they're not paying attention and something gets broken, it can be expensive to fix. I do know some schools where they do it as like a loan and the parents pay it off bit by bit, and so it's owned by the child. We don't do it that way. But I'm yet to find something that, with a little bit of creativity, you can't make work in a classroom. One of my most exciting interviews to ever witness. And my assistant head is now going to blush when she listens to this. She came in and I said, I need to know my SLT can teach. You need to be able to walk the walk and talk the talk. I want a lesson. And she did a virtual reality, never met the kids before. They put on a t-shirt. She had iPads and they were scanning, and it looked like they were looking at their own insides. And it was random, but she thought creatively how she could take what it was that we'd asked her to do and apply the technology to it and make it engaging. Because she said, if I don't know all of their needs and I don't know them, I have to make what I do the most exciting thing ever. And she did.
Wow. I've seen those things. There are t-shirts where you can do, and you put the iPad up and it kind of shows you through the t-shirt what's going on inside.
Yeah.
It's really clever. 'Cause I think you sit there and you have that in my set. Back in the old days, there was always that mannequin or some sort of thing in the science lab with all the organs, which if you knocked it, they all fell out. And it was like a jigsaw, get them in the correct order. And seeing it there is different to looking at your friend and seeing where it would be in your. It was just, it was like that wasn't human. I don't know, but just when you start pointing at it and you're looking inside someone, it's like that is going on there. When I touch there, oh, that is that. That is that. Using things like that, where you're using it, kind of looking inside yourself, makes it much more interesting.
It does. And is that then the thing that sparks somebody off to want to be a sonographer or, an X-ray technician or a doctor?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's just sometimes, and again, for our generation, what excited us, probably not a lot. Didn't take much to excite our generation. But with the current generation, with all the stuff going on around them, the world around them, going into school can be really quite boring. So it's hard to be inspired by school when it's that boring. I'm not saying teachers are boring. I'm not saying that. The curriculum really doesn't help. Limited technology and funding and all that lot and all the pressures doesn't help. But that's the thing we've got to look at, is if they can have all this stuff going on outside and they come into school, it's hard to be inspiring.
Yeah. It's not surprising that following COVID, attendance rates are not where they used to be.
No, no. And it's interesting. There was an article today I saw, and it was something like, this was on social media. 74% of staff say spend most of their time, or 74% of their time is spent dealing with challenging behaviour. And I'm like, yeah, but all behaviour is a communication. So that's the child communicating that I don't want to be here. This isn't a nice environment for me. So no one's liking the environment, but we're still not changing the environment. We're still going to keep doing the same. Children are going to protest and do the challenging behavior. teachers are going to have to deal with that and leave the profession. It's like, when will we change the environment so that everyone likes it? So I'm not saying get rid of education. It's not a case of they don't want to learn. They do want to learn, but it's got to be kind of relevant. It's got to fit in with the world around us. And I think using technology is one of those ways that can really help.
It's fundamental.
And I'm just going to stay away from the whole banning phones and putting them in pouches because they're evil. They're not. They're amazing. They're probably the best thing we have in school, but they have to be used correctly. And I think in technology, we're not quite there yet. I wish Apple and Google had a way you could get rid of certain apps when you're in a certain location, and it helps you use those phones for educational purposes. My daughters used them. The drama teacher puts the scripts. They all get their phones out. They access the scripts. There's no photocopying. They all have their script on their phone, sized what makes sense to them. Great. They can read it. There are so many little uses my daughter's used her phone for at school. It's brilliant. Yet they're seen as bad.
Yeah, it's a really hard one because you're right that without those technology giants or without those development companies saying, actually, education is a market we want to be in, it's really hard to try and manage some of that. Yeah.
And what I would say is, if you are banning phones in school, as a teacher, as a head teacher, ban your own phone when you're at home. Because if you know it increases their mental health and you know it's better for them, and I see, I'm trying to get off social media, but I see the amount of stuff going on Twitter or on LinkedIn or stuff around education and lots of conversations going on, and I'm like, but this is probably the same effect on the children, where they're kind of struggling with it all and having to feel they've got to keep up. How many teachers and head teachers and external professionals are all on social media feeling that need to keep up and feeling they need to have a presence there? Is this impacting your mental health in the exact same way as the children? But yet we haven't learned how to deal with it as adults. So we can't teach the children because we don't know how to do it ourselves yet.
That's very true. I am absolutely terrible for being on TikTok following autism speakers and influencers. But so much so it's a running joke because we use TikTok for little sound bites from people like Dean Beadle and Lisa Lloyd for training.
But I think we end up doing it, and then we're moaning about the kids doing it. And you're like, well, we need to fix ourselves. We need to learn what's healthy for ourselves and then model good mobile phone usage to our children so they learn. Because if we spend our entire time on our phone, guess what those kids are going to want to do when they grow up? Be on their phone.
Yeah.
It's not the phone that's the problem. It's the people and it's society. Clickbait stuff. I'm probably am going to delete the Facebook app soon because it's just getting fed up of stuff. Twitter I don't do anyway. It's just it can fill a lot of time. But if you ask me, if literally I could spend a whole weekend on social media, I could probably be entertained for an entire weekend on social media. Would there be anything there would I tell anyone else about? No, not really. It was never that high quality. But I could fill a whole weekend doing nothing, and I wouldn't be bored. I'd be entertained, and my endorphins, all that stuff would be going off. What have I achieved? What have I done? Has it helped me? No. Probably negatively impacted me and my health. Not getting out, not getting the exercise, not getting that social interaction with people. It's not the phones, it's the social media.
Get on the VR and be doing Beat Saber, and then you'll be getting loads of exercise.
Oh, I had a VR headset and I tried to do some spaceship stuff. I kept getting ill. But I think Beat Saber, where you're standing, those sorts of games are great because your ears and your eyes are agreeing with each other on what you're doing.
Yes.
It's when the VR and the eyes and your ears don't agree, that's when you can get into trouble. So we've covered a lot of technology, good things. And I also like the fact that when I asked you what hasn't worked, you went, well, nothing really hasn't worked. It generally means you choose the right things. And where it's not working, it is tweaking. Nothing's been a colossal failure, because I don't think it ever generally is, because you generally go in informed. So what would you say to other schools about technology?
I would say don't hide from it. At the end of the day, it's already in your world. You just need to embrace it and think about how you can use it creatively, because actually, if not, we're setting children up to not have the skills they need for the world that's coming.
Definitely. And one thing with AI to me for staff can be a real time saver. So whether you're creating quizzes, creating worksheets, summarizing, writing reports, anything like that, AI can save a lot of time. So please, if you haven't been trying AI yet, please dive in. Dive into other things, have a look, have a play, be curious. There's a lot there which can make a difference. It can make things more engaging, it can save time, and hopefully all of that comes together to improve outcomes, because that's what it's all about, isn't it?
Yeah.
Definitely. Cool. So thank you for coming on the show today. Really enjoyed it. I always love talking about tech. One of my favorite things. And you've given me some links so I can find out about from the school what you're up to. And you've given me a link to the VR AR sandbox and the VR Anne Frank house. So you'll find those links wherever you listen to the podcast or on the Zencast website. So thank you for listening to the show. If you haven't subscribed already, click on that subscribe button. You can follow us on social media, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and even TikTok. We are there. We are there everywhere. And if you're looking for a simple, secure way to capture and share evidence of learning, or a way to capture pupil voice, a way to celebrate and share achievements, or a simple, safe way to communicate with parents, you need to have a look at Eversense. Eversense is our evidence for learning system that also is a parental engagement tool. And to find out more about Eversense, visit the B Squared website. You can also find out about our CPD, read our blog, loads much more, and find out about all our other products. And you'll find a link to the website or to book a meeting with me so I can take you through Eversense and what it can do in the show notes as well. So thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Zencast. It's goodbye from me.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.